in the beginning of modern age, it was thought that this solar system, what we now know as the solar system, is all that was. That's the whole universe. And we come from if we come from anywhere, we come from someplace inside that universe. Then, by the time of last century or the 19th century, we knew that the solar system is part of the galaxy. But then we thought that the galaxy is all there is. So we come from the galaxy. If we come from the universe, we come from the galaxy. Then it turned out that this is just one of millions, perhaps billions of galaxies. So our vision is expanding. Where we come from is something far bigger, far deeper than what we thought. Where do the stars come from? If we come from the stars. We come from this universe. But where did this universe come from? That is now the question that is being discussed more and more. Because this universe wasn't there always. It came to be. It evolved. Now the universe was born probably, according to the best guesses today, at the time of the Big Bang, 80.3 billion years ago, more or less. And this cosmic event gave birth to everything that we can now observe in the universe, gave birth to the observable universe. And therefore it gave birth also to the seeds, to the predecessors of living things. So if we came from anywhere, we came from the universe that was born in the Big Bang, and out of that, chaos then gradually distilled what we know as the universe. Distilled what we know, all the things in the universe. So also us. Also not us as we are now, but the origins of life. The origins of everything. Planets, solar systems. So if we ask, where did we come from? I would have to say, we come from the deeper dimension, which became then the explicit, the known, the perceivable order of the universe. This deeper level is known by various names, the deeper dimension. Some people call it the Akashic dimension, or the Akashic field, or a grand unified field, or the implicate order, according to David Bohm. We are children of the cosmos. Now this very interesting question then, our origin truly, if it reaches back, are we truly allied? Are we truly part of that deeper dimension? Is that discoverable still in us? Are we truly beings of the cosmos? And I think the answer is yes. Because who we are is not just what we have always been. It is what we have become. And this who we are, what we have become, is not just a body, but it's also a mind, a consciousness. And that consciousness is very probably has its roots in that deeper dimension. That dimension that gives rise to everything that there is, including the laws that regulate what there is. The laws of nature, about which scientists such as Einstein among them said that when we really discover them and take them seriously, we recognize that there must be at work a great spirit, a great mind must be behind these laws. Because they are coherent. They create an observable, intelligible universe. We are part of that intelligible universe, and we have co-created that universe with the laws that were born at the same time that we were born. When was this? Now we enter the deepest mysteries. We can't say what was there before the Big Bang. Probably it was a field of potentials, a field where everything that is possible to happen could have its happening possibility. If there was anything prior to the Big Bang, it was an intelligence. It was a cosmic mind. In Christian origins, we talk about the word the word was, in the beginning there was the word. It was the logos. In the Eastern religions, the same idea crops up. The intelligence, the Tao, whatever we call it. The Brahman was there first. And everything else developed out of that. You say now, am I talking mysticism or am I talking science? I'm talking science with its roots on that same dimension from where mysticism also stems. This universe is a mystic universe. It's a miraculous universe. Over 100 years ago, the great astronomer James Jeans said the universe resembles a big thought more than a big mechanism. And sure enough, more and more we investigate the finest, the smallest details, the deepest elements of this universe, the more we find that it is more like a great thought, that it is information, that it is something intelligible. A very, very different concept from what there was 50 years ago, but still is there in so-called mainstream science, much of what is being taught today in universities. But if you really contemplate this question, who are we, where we come from, you must say we have to go beyond that. Because in the new quantum sciences, we recognize that what there is in the world is a quantum system. The great scientist Max Planck said, after 40 years of studying the deepest elements of this physical reality, which means the atoms, I can tell you one thing, there is no such thing as matter in the universe. What is there? He said, what there is a set of vibrations that are held together by a force. And that creates the atom. From the atoms are created the molecules. And the molecules, the molecular, supramolecular objects, the many things that we can observe, that we can touch. And all of those are finally sets of vibration acting together. And as Planck said, this force that holds the atom together, the proton and the neutron, and then the electrons that come into this, that we must consider as an intelligence, a cosmic intelligence. Wherever we look, however we look at the world, its origins are beyond matter, beyond even energy in a conventional form. What are the origins then? Where we come from, and therefore indirectly who we are? The answer that is informed vibration, informed energy, energy informed in the form of vibration. Because when we examine the smallest parts, no matter is there. What there is vibration of a given frequency, phase, magnitude. And these vibrations, when they are in phase, they create structures. They create things that appear as though they were material. So we are ourselves clusters or sets of vibration that appear as though we were solid material bodies, but we are more than that. I simply call it nowadays, to give a simplest possible term that's acceptable to modern science also, I call it an attractor. An attractor is something that acts within a complex system and makes it behave in a certain way. This universe is not a random universe, not a chance universe. This attractor is in the universe. It's part of the universe. At its deepest level, it's the information of the energy that makes up this universe, makes what it is. The universe is not what we thought it was. It's a quantum system. More exactly, it's a macroscopic, highly integrated quantum system. What we're recognizing now, that in this remarkable universe, a truly mysterious universe, that we are decoding little by little, that all things act together, all things act as one. What quantum science teaches us, any part of a quantum system is not local. It's also present in every other part. You can't act local. There is nothing local. No causality, no push and pull, no effect and cause is local. Whatever you do is penetrating throughout this system. It's part of that system, and we are part of that system. How we come and why we think we come from beyond, it can be very easily illustrated. This beyond, where the laws of nature reside, that is something like the laws, let's say, of a game, laws of cards, laws of chess, or whatever. These laws are given. When you play the game, you don't play with the laws. The laws are already given. The laws just tell you how you can play the game. And they're the same for the novice and for the grandmaster in chess. The laws are what this universe is fundamentally. And it's not the game. It's what governs the game. So we talk about the laws of nature. We can no longer say that they are part of the universe. No, they were there when the universe was born. And they will be there, as far as we can tell, when the universe will end. Because that's also a case, that this universe is not a permanent feature of reality or of the cosmos. Because if there is one thing we recognize more and more, and this is also fairly recent, surprisingly recent in science, although it's not recent in religion and spirituality, namely the idea that there is a higher will, a higher intellect that governs the evolution of things in the universe and of the universe itself, the structure itself. It all hangs together. And this evolution is not random, not just one darn thing after another. As philosophers used to say not so long ago, describe what the universe really is, they would say it's just one darn thing after another. We're recognizing more that the universe is progressing from chaos to order. And we are part of this progression. Our consciousness, our body express this in different ways. We are part of an evolutionary process that is non-random, because we can go as far as saying there is nothing random in the universe. Why? Because there is nothing disconnected from anything in the universe. It all hangs together. Whatever you do here and now also affects everything there and then. So all this progress is, to use a good term suggested in a different context by the great psychiatrist, a good friend of mine, STANISLAV GROF. He uses the term holotropic. Holos means whole, oneness in Greek. Tropic means a tropism means something that you tend toward. A fish toward the food has a tropism. Even bacteria have tropisms. And of course, our instincts, everything that we are, has a tropistic element. We are tending toward some direction rather than another. And so does the universe. All of evolution is holotropic in that sense. All elements work together. And they need to, as it were, in human life, any living system, they need to work together. Because if they don't, life is no longer capable. Life is not possible except in a quantum coherent system. On the physical level, the objective is to maintain this system, this living system that is us. And if we are healthy, if we are normal, we are part of this drive. We obey it, we live it, we express it. Intuitive people express it. So-called primitive cultures were far from primitive, they express it. They knew it. Animals know it without being able to verbalize it or conceptualize it. And we, with our ability to conceptualize, to put together and interpret things, we are interpreting this drive, and we are misinterpreting it very often. We are interpreting it as a drive for power, for domination, in the human world for wealth. We are interpreting it as we first, our country first, never mind the rest. We are replacing this inherent oneness which is there in the evolution of all life in the universe. We're interpreting it as competition where the fittest survives. This is not that kind of a universe. This is not that kind of nature. Sure, there is competition in nature. There appears to be also violence. But it's always toward a larger objective. The deeper objective in nature is always the survival of a species, the maintenance of this species within a context. And the context is always and ultimately the web of life, the system of life on this planet. And one day I think we'll discover that the system of life on this planet is part of a larger system of life elsewhere in this universe. It will be an incredible sophistry to believe that we alone possess intelligence, we alone are living. We are part of an ongoing evolution of life and of consciousness in this universe. To recognize it, that is one great challenge for us. And I mean recognize with a hyphen, if you write it, recognize, because we have cognized it. Classical cultures, traditional cultures, the mystery schools have known this. Now we need to recognize it on the basis of scientific evidence. And when we talk about new science, that's the new science. The new science is a science of oneness, a science of striving together toward a higher objective. The big challenge is that we, with our conscious mind, we can misapprehend this. We can misinterpret this. We are free to develop valid interpretations, valid ideas based on our experience. But we're also free to disregard those experiences, free to misconstrue them. It's a very interesting phenomenon that what we believe so strongly influences what we see. It used to be said, what we see is what we believe. We believe what we see. Both ways it works. Sure enough, as a skeptic, we believe what we see. But also to recognize that we see what we believe. Because if we strongly disbelieve something, you say, that's nonsense, that cannot be, we don't see it. The evidence may be there in front of us, we don't see it. Or we see it as something else. It takes a long time for something unfamiliar to be built into something that is familiar. Except that if it has a deeper root, except that this information is coming to us from that same drive that is behind evolution, then we can also recognize things that we otherwise disbelieve. So there we are at the cusp of an evolutionary process. We built it up to a point where it really is in question whether it can continue this way. It's become unstable. Now, instability is fine, because without instability, there is no change, there is no progress. Things progress, things move when the previous level of being of that system has become unstable, untenable. Then we move, then we search, then we finally find, hopefully, or we disappear. But if we survive, we move on to something else. And that this cusp at which we find ourselves is precisely that moment in history where things either change or they become extinct. The great, overwhelming majority of species on this planet have become extinct. The human species is not so old. As a conscious species, 50,000 years. Perhaps as a biological species, maybe 3 million, 3.5 million years. But as a conscious species, able to reason, able to interpret things, and therefore able to choose a faulty direction, that is recent. And with the power that we now have through technology, we can implement are poor interpretations. A great danger. Freedom is opportunity. Freedom is the greatest value. But it's also danger, because opportunity is to develop the good as well as to develop the bad. Only if we go in, only if we go back to the drive that has created this universe, which is living in us, which is part of us. Only if we do that do we find the right interpretation, do we find who we are. I sound like a mystic, perhaps, but I can quote none other than Ervin Schrödinger, one of the greatest physicists of our day, who said, consciousness is one. To use consciousness in the plural is to misapprehend it, to mistake it. There is no sense in which we can think of consciousness in the plural. Ultimately, there is one consciousness. And Einstein agreed. He said this is a kind of an optical illusion to think of consciousness as residing severally in each of us separately. We have one consciousness, one mind, and that same mind stems from this dimension which created all things in the universe, from the atoms to the amoeba, to the seeds of the simplest plant, to the algae, to the complex organisms, to societies of organisms, to ecosystems, to entire societies, now a global society of human beings. It's all a product of this drive toward oneness, drive toward wholeness. But if we now say that these systems, from the simplest to the most complex, also have a mental dimension, a mental pole. Again, the great philosopher Alfred North Whitehead talked about the physical pole and the mental pole of all things, which he called the actual entities. All things are actual entities, and they all have a mental pole as well. Mysticism, no, is the best guess that we have in science as to how our mind operates. Our mind is there, even when the brain is turned off. How do we know this? The evidence is manifold today. It's there in the near-death experiences most explicitly, because people who have near-death experiences, very often they are in hospitals and they're hooked up to instrumentation that shows the waves of their movement of their brain. And there are periods, not for everybody obviously, but it's very often, many cases, when this is flatlined, the line is flat. The brain doesn't operate in any knowable way. And during this period, the individuals are in a given setting, they're exposed to sights and sounds, happenings. And when they come back, and if they come back, not always, but often they do come back to normal functioning, they describe in detail what happened during the time that their brain was flatlined. How is it possible? Today, even the greatest skeptics admit that this is possible. Not because they are convinced by arguments, but because they lived it. There was a case of a famous Harvard neurosurgeon, Eben Alexander, who spent 7 weeks in coma, or 7 days actually, in deep coma, where there was no possibility, that he would have said before, no possibility of any conscious experience. When he came back, which was half of a miracle because he was given up by standard medical science, when he came back, he described in detail what happened in ways that are verifiable. We are no longer entitled to believe that all we are is a series of brain functions in the cerebellum, which produce as a kind of a byproduct sensations. And these sensations we call consciousness. So that when you turn off the system, the sensations stop. Sure enough, they stop. But the sensations may exist outside the brain. Maybe the ancient insight is true, namely that there is life beyond. Call it the soul, call it a spirit, whatever we call it. I prefer to call it just a consciousness, a cosmic consciousness which operates in us. And we can explain this now fairly well with modern concepts. Because think of it, this cosmic consciousness could be like a hologram. A hologram, is a system of information such that every part is represented in every other part. We can say that in the hologram, the totality of the information that creates the image, whatever the hologram is present in every small part. And we can show this. This is scientifically provable. You don't have to have a complete hologram. It's enough to take a classical projector, a slide projector, or anything that projects an image, you see. Take the lens out of it. What you get then is what is known as the optical array. You don't see anything because all the elements is present simultaneously together on the screen if you project it to the screen. Then you take off your glasses and you hold the glasses in front of the screen, anywhere in front of the screen. The total image appears very small behind the glass on the screen. This is known as distributed information. Information is not local. And we can say this cosmic consciousness, which is present in all of us, is distributed information. It is something that we receive. We can decode. What the brain does is decodes it, it transmits it, it makes it perceivable, but doesn't just make it. That consciousness is present. So you might ask, so is everything that we perceive such a consciousness? No, obviously, in our consciousness, in our mind, there are many elements that come from the senses. We see sights, we hear sounds, we taste tastes, etc. So our consciousness is filled with sensory information. The big mistake of modern times was that we thought that that's all there is. There is more to it. We all have experiences that go beyond the senses. They're called transcendental experiences. But there's a whole school now of transcendental, transpersonal psychology and psychiatry, investigating in detail the elements of consciousness that cannot be derived from sensory information conveyed from the five senses to the brain. There are things that happen. Near-death experience is one. Out-of-body experiences, very frequent as well. And there are spontaneous intuitions. You might ask, do I have such intuitions? I must say, yes, I'm not a mystique. I try to be a philosopher of science. But whether I like it or not, I do have such experiences. They appear in the form of a spontaneous but otherwise inexplicable guidance. When I work on a problem, when I work on something, when I think about it, when I write something, work on something, I think about it day and night all the time. And very often ideas come to the surface. And these ideas are not rational ideas, not sensory produced ideas. They come. They come very often in this half-conscious state between sleep and awakening, the hypnagogic state. They come in meditation. And this is not inexplicable in the sense if we're dealing with a holographic consciousness of which we are an expression. Because then we are part of the consciousness of other people. We are part of the consciousness of predecessors. It's open whether we are part of the experience of people who come after us. Because is the future also part of the hologram? I won't deal with that, I don't know. But I can say the past is. The past is there in the present. And whatever happens to us, it has been informed. It's not the first time we live in the sense that the consciousness that is operating in us has been picking up information from other existences, from other lives. Whether it's literally us It's a mood question. It's something that we experience. Who is us? If you just say this is limited to our body, then it wasn't us, because this body after a while will be dead. But if it's us in terms of the consciousness that we possess, then yes, then we are the hologram. We are part of it. Because we have gone so far now in ignoring this dimension that we have created tensions that are leading to almost critical instabilities in the world around us. The future is in our hands. And the great fortunate lemma to this statement is that the hour of which the future is in the hands of, that hour is a multidimensional, deeply conscious being. A being who can be one in the way that the system can operate. Our Earth system cannot operate as a plurality of conflicting elements. And that's what we are doing now. We cannot find each other and hope that somehow out of this many conflicts, something will happen that will maintain the system. By system, I don't mean just energy and matter. I mean the total set of relationships that makes the web of life a global quantum system on this planet, where everybody can live, where everybody has a chance to develop, to evolve. That calls for becoming one, for cooperating, for acting as one. And it is possible because our consciousness is one. We can believe Carl Jung, who said the same thing about the unus mundus, one world, one consciousness in the world. So where do we get the guidance? We get it from us, from inside. We have it there. We wouldn't have survived as an individual so far. Every child has it. As we said, every animal has it. Every living thing has it. We have disregarded it, ignored it, but now we know that the time has come to take seriously who we are, who we really, truly are. A quantum system informed by a quantum consciousness. I know it sounds esoteric, sounds mysticism. But if we interpret correctly and deeply the findings that are coming now from the cutting-edge sciences both of the brain, of the universe, of the physical domain, of the biological systems, all of this tell us we are basically quantum systems interacting with each other and being guided, I think being governed by a holotropic consciousness. That's my religion, if you ask me. And I'd say that this is not religion in a classical sense. It is close to some Eastern religions, close to Buddhism, to Taoism. But it's close also to the Old Testament. And it's also close to the teachings of Jesus, who was ultimately teaching love and oneness as the goal, as the objective of our earthly existence. What we have to change is the superficial interpretations, the symbolic packages in which these deep spiritual insights have come down to us and have become part of a power hierarchy in every organized religion. We can go back beyond the religions and form a religion of our own, a spiritual community, which is at the same time a scientific community. Authentic spirituality stems from the same root as deep science does. The origins are there. The great prophets are the great religious leaders and the great scientists, great thinkers. It's all one. I was fortunate in coming toward these insights by having spent my childhood as an artist, as a concert pianist. Having made my living actually, on giving concerts in public in all parts of the world until I was in my mid-30s. And the experience I had on the concert stage was a deep spiritual experience. is the experience of what you could today express with the word. I know it's controversial, but I know it's very, very meaningful and appropriate. The word is love. The experience of love for all things around me, for creating a single domain, a single sphere of unconditional, perpetual love around with me. That's when you're really playing music. That's when you're not just following notes. Then you're harmonized. They're one with the world. And that experience stayed with me as I left the concert stage. And when I write and speak on the basis of scientific findings, but I put them together, I interpret them in ways that also correspond to my experience. And that's the opportunity that I want to pursue. That's the opportunity of bringing out to people this insight that we have a deeper I, a deeper oneness. And we are not alone. We don't need to go to other planets to find our community. The community is here. It's the community of all life. And together we can make this a living community. Because today we need to transform. We need to change. The community that we now have is vulnerable. It is heading toward greater conflicts. And if you pursue on this path, the future is not going to be bright. It's not going to be, at least for human beings.